this morning with political commentator Andy Williams and political consultant Emma Burnell. Very good to see you both this morning.
Morning.
Andy, let's start with you, shall we? On the front page of The Telegraph, London is now a no-go zone for Jews.
So this is Robin Simcox, who's the Home Office's independent advisor on extremism, and he says that if the pro-Palestine protests that are going on in London have been going on for many months, if they continue, that London will have turned into a no-go zone for Jews. I think this is just so overblown. I think it's completely wrong. I think it's divisive rhetoric. We've seen lots of it recently. One of the really, everything that's going on in Gaza at the moment is obviously an absolute tragedy. And one of the less important but really sad consequences that we've seen here in Britain and in London, a division open up between people of different faiths, different ethnicities. I think it's a real shame. But this kind of extreme, over-the-top rhetoric, I think it's just absolute nonsense.
You think it's over the top to say that London is now a no-go zone?
Absolutely. I think
even on a Saturday?
I do. I think I understand why people might feel uncomfortable in those situations, absolutely. And I think, like any large group of people, like any large protest, there will be a minority of people who are aggressive, who might be violent, who behave badly, who use language that is inappropriate. But I don't think it's right to say that London is a no-go zone for anyone, really.
OK.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There are signs on those marches that are unacceptable and they should be dealt with, but the marches themselves are not anti-Semitic, and it's really important to make that point. Also, those marches are in a really small area of a really big city. When you say London is a no-go area, which bits are you talking about? Because it ain't Golders Green or Stamford Hill where I grew up. And quite frankly, I grew up in a house in Stamford Hill. I had Muslim neighbours on one side, Orthodox Jewish neighbours on the other side. Everyone rubbed along fine. And I strongly suspect that Stamford Hill is still exactly that way. I just think it isn't fair to say the whole of London is... And I don't know who it helps, because I don't know that that's going to make Jewish people who do feel uncomfortable and do feel bad, feel any safer if that's what's the rhetoric coming from government.
Having said that, though, is a lot of this to do with optics? We've just seen there the projections on the Elizabeth Tower. I hope we can get them up again. From the river to the sea, that
absolutely,
chart,
and that was completely wrong.
That's,
totally agree.
in the heart of Westminster. And for any Jew in London, for any Jew in the country, you must not feel welcome when you can see
absolutely.
that.
And I wrote a long newsletter this weekend about protest. I am hugely in favour of the right to protest. Being told not to do it makes me want to do it more. But I haven't gone on any of these protests. And I actually walked past the other day and thought I'd like to go in and have a look, see what this is all about. It was actually that protest. And I thought, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to be photographed there, frankly. No. And that, for me, says that the people leading the protests are getting it wrong, because the best protests feel inclusive and that you want to be a part of and welcoming to anyone who has even, say, 60% of agreement with you. And I think what they've done is narrowed down the welcoming to people who are only 100% on that side. They must deal with things like that projection. They must deal with things like anti-Semitic signage that are on those marches. But the majority of people on those marches are not doing so because they hate Jews or even hate the state of Israel. And they could certainly hate the current Israeli government. An awful lot of the British Jews I know do. But they are doing it because they are absolutely heartbroken at the tragedy that's unfolding in Gaza. We cannot forget what happened on October the 7th and that tragedy too. There are two groups of very hurt people at the moment, and both of them have a right to their say, and I think that's what needs to be held on to here.
Emma, let's stick with you, shall we, on the front page of The Guardian. Quite extraordinary, actually. Joe Biden announced in the State of the Union speech in the US last night that the US is going to build a temporary port on the Gaza shoreline. Yeah, quite an important distinction there. Temporary port on the Gaza shoreline to allow delivery of humanitarian aid. Yeah,
this
Gaza.
Is really important. We are looking at an absolute horrific crisis in Gaza. We're looking at famine. this is, that's the word. That's not a word that's being bandied about lightly. That is what the UN are saying. If things continue, there is a famine in Gaza, and aid is not getting in by road, and that's partly because there's been an overzealous blockading of that from the Israeli forces, and the Americans have been trying to do this diplomatically, to say, you've got to open up more, and I think they've reached breaking point.
Is that in the way that they are planning to do it, is that American aid will be able to be delivered to Gaza from the sea to the shore. But an American foot won't have to tread on
exactly.
Gaza.
So it's a very clever workaround that means that they're not putting boots on the ground, which is the phrase that we always use in terms of sending troops in, but they are making sure that those aid convoys are fully protected and get to the people in desperate need.
Yeah. Emma's right about how stark it is. I mean, if you've seen those satellite images of the Gaza Strip and how many hundreds of thousands of people have moved south right down to the border with Egypt, I mean, the mass movement of people in such a short time just shows the scale of the crisis.
What is Netanyahu going to say to this? Have we had any... We haven't had a reaction.
I don't think we've had response from Netanyahu yet. But again, this is where the cleverness of the plot comes, because I believe that the answer is that there will be Israeli checks, but it'll be an American-led aid convoy. And frankly, the Israelis are rapidly losing allies. They really can't afford to stop the Americans from getting this much needed aid into Gaza.
It's a terrible situation, isn't it?